feel it's necessary to yak about bullshit in order to be comfortable?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's Late Night with the Gringo. Of course, I am your reluctant Gringo here with my son, and this is episode 59. All right, and it is a great day. As you can see in the title from the thumbnail, we have a few things to talk about. A little surprising, but, I thought it was coming, but we'll talk about it. But it's opening day for Major League Baseball, so we'll get into that a little bit later because we can talk about what went wrong for Major League Baseball today because, well, it was bad. So, but first off, how you doing? How's your day going, man?
I'm doing good. I've been enjoying some baseball, at least the baseball that I was able to watch at the time. We missed out about we didn't miss out on any games technically, but we missed out on a good chunk of or parts of games.
Yeah, we missed the first 4 innings of most games. I think we missed 4 or 5 innings, and that was we were just like everybody else in them. I think the world.
We thankfully had that, was it Sling? So we could actually watch the ESPN game, which was the Yankees-Brewers, at least from the beginning, kind of. So that wasn't too bad.
But we'll get to it.
But yeah, we'll get to it. But I think I'm having a good day. Good day. A little behind in work because of baseball.
Yeah, we're swamped today, but that's okay. We've been busy. It's been a good day. But apparently, Trump doesn't want to pay for Elmo anymore. Did you? Let me ask you this. Because I was working overnights when you were, born and you were a little kid like that. I was working overnight, so I never really paid attention to too much you were watching. Your mother did that. Were you a Sesame Street baby?
I did watch Sesame Street here and there. I do remember it. I don't remember how much I watched of it. I'll be honest, but I do remember it.
Okay,
I do remember it.
Well, apparently, it's on the chopping block and for the government. But I don't know if it's really that big of a deal. But let's talk about it because it was in. It's been Congress. Congress is spent time on this today. So we have this article here from ABC News. This is the Republicans accuse NPR, PBS, of bias at hearing. Democrats say it's a partisan attack. Trump wants to remove the government funding that goes to NPR, PBS, Sesame Street, things like that. And, I was a little bit ignorant about how much money we give. And I was like, is this really a big deal? And I don't know if it's a big deal. Is it? And I guess any money that's going towards the media, that media should not be biased in one way or the other. I mean, it should be if it's government funded. But, before we get into any numbers, just off the top of your head, have you ever watched NPR? I've listened to NPR and I've watched PBS before. Have you really spent any time watching any of these things?
NPR is the, news?
The radio. The radio, yeah.
The radio.
Yeah. National Public Radio.
Yeah, I've not really... I've maybe once or twice NPR.
Yeah.
I don't remember it too well.
They like to talk like this.
Yeah, I remember that.
We're going to talk about poetry today.
Yeah. I remember that. There's, of course, Sesame Street, PBS, some of the cartoons. I remember Steve's Europe. What is it called? I can't remember. Anyways, I remember
when I was watching
Steve's Europe. I think it's Rick Steve's Europe.
Oh, Rick Steve's Europe. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, PBS was Sesame Street, The Electric Company, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So that's when I was a kid. 1, 2, 3, Schoolhouse Rock.
Mr. Rogers. We still had a bit of Mr. Rogers early on.
Yeah.
But then I kind of grew out of it. Of course, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Looney Tunes.
So what do you think about Marjorie Taylor Greene, chairwoman of the committee, wanting to go after Elmo? Bert and Ernie.
What did they do?
Well, they get our money. And what the Republicans and the GOP and Trump is claiming is that why should we subsidize this stuff when it is biased towards the Democrats or towards liberal ideas or liberal social messaging and things like that, which they are. Let's just look, folks, I've listened to a lot of NPR because I like to get both sides of a story. But NPR is extremely liberal, extremely biased towards the sides of the Democratic Party. PBS, well, when you have that their nightly news, if just go back and watch the night of the election and watch their reactions, Judy Woodruff and all those people, just how skewed they are towards that Democratic Party, towards the liberal basis, more towards the high academic elite. Let's face it, that's what it is. It is. So that really can't be argued. So should we be giving money should our tax dollars, should your tax dollars, my tax dollars be going towards these types of things that we don't necessarily want to hear about or really want to fund? And I think the answer to that is no.
No, listen, if it's government money, it should be a biased source. Of course, I think certain creators and directors are going to have an inherent bias, and that's going to obviously always bleed through a little bit in the content that they create. But it shouldn't be overtly, clearly one side or the other. I think that's reasonable. I leave room for human error and people being human and wanting to be who they are to an extent, right? But I don't think you should have a publicly funded news media corporation, public channel be overtly on one side of the political aisle, because all that does is kind of try to sow division and be like, hey, look at these guys. These guys don't agree with Elmo. You know what I mean? It's like, that's very, it's very wrong. I think it paints a bad picture, and it's a bad example.
Well, during the hearing, Republicans called for an end to the taxpayer-funded media as they accused the news outlets of promoting a woke ideology for younger audiences. Now, of course, there's a lot of kids for these audiences. As Democrats sought to have a little fun in the hearing by questioning the witnesses on the intricacies of Elmo and Cookie Monster, as they accused Republicans of wasting time. Okay. I think Congress is a waste of time, period, but let's keep going. PBS President and CEO Paula Kerger and NPR President and CEO Catherine Maha rebutted allegations of bias, saying the outlets abide by journalistic standards and serve a diverse audience that includes rural viewers. I have no doubt that when PBS was created, when PBS was a thing, it was because there's a lot of people out there that really couldn't afford education standards, tutors, things like that. There were a lot of kids left out. And so we learned our ABCs and our 1, 2, 3s from Sesame Street. We learned words from Sesame Street. We learned things from Sesame Street, the electric company, 1, 2, 3, all that, right? And 1, 2, 3 contact. But nowadays, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of rural areas that don't have internet, but I think Elon's fixing that. But I'm not sure that the problem is as widespread as it was back in the 70s. I don't think it's as widespread now as it was in the 70s. So I'm not sure that there's so much of a need for this anymore. And I would say to the president of PBS and to the president of NPR that their journalistic standards and what they're saying, that's an absolute lie. It's just a flat out lie. They have no idea. If they really do believe that, then they aren't listening to their own product. So they're either incompetently not listening to their own product and not watching what they're putting out, or they're just flat out lying in front of Congress, which those are the two things I would say, because it is absolutely biased. Now, I know there's been all sorts of things about like Sesame Street. And again, this is past my time where they're introducing characters with alternative lifestyles, things like that. Am I correct in that? I'm not sure.
You're not wrong. Yeah, I remember they introduced, or didn't one of the creators say that Bert and Ernie kind of retroactively just kind of made them a couple? I think so. At one point I heard that, I think they added in some characters that had pronouns. Which, again, what does that have to do with teaching kids ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, the basics? It's the same thing that goes on wrong with local schools, public schools. It's like, why are we focused on that instead of teaching kids how to, read, write, arithmetic, those things?
Right, because
we're failing at that right now. So
yeah, we're failing at that. So we're failing at this as well. So is this going to happen? Yeah, I think it's going to happen. I think we're going to remove the funding. And here's what Marjorie Taylor Greene said. Now, of course, she is the AOC of the Republican Party. Let's just put it to you that way. As liberal and as far fringe as AOC is, that's Marjorie Taylor Greene is our AOC in the Republican Party. She's a little bit out there. She puts out commercials of her firing weapons and blowing up cars. It's kind of interesting when she's running for election, but that's her. So NPR and PBS have increased. Oh, she's also one of those QAnon. She was one of the early QAnon people. If you remember what QAnon was, I don't know. So all that conspiracy nut stuff. So NPR and PBS have increasingly become radical left-wing echo chambers for a narrow audience of mostly wealthy white urban liberals and progressives. Well, that's true. It's mostly wealthy white urban liberals and progressives that fund along with certain corporations and endowments and colleges and universities that fund NPR and PBS. Very little of the money actually comes from the government. So, is it a big deal? Will it hurt? If we take the money away, will it hurt? No, probably not. About 1%. Now, if we talk about Sesame Street, I had to look this up. I don't have the most current numbers, but I know between 2018 and 2020, every year, Sesame Street alone generates about the Children's Television Network or Workshop, whatever they call it. It generates about $30 to $35 million in merchandising sales alone each year. I should know, when I worked at Target, we had 2 aisles just dedicated to Sesame Street and stuff like that. It's ridiculous. It was crazy. They're making money. I mean, they have money. It's not like they're poor. Not like this is an independent group that's just sort of floundering around doing nothing. So, but again, so if it's about 1%, so get rid of it. So it seems like it's less about money, and this is more about culture war. I don't know if you would agree with me on that or not, but for me, it's less about the money and more about making a statement socially, one side or the other. Both the Democrats wanting to keep one of their sounding platforms, which is what it is, and the Republicans wanting to eliminate it. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, we got a few comments here from the Kentucky Atheist. We have, I don't know what you were referring to when it said that didn't happen. I think that just came late. They had a character that had 2 same-sex parents on Sesame Street, apparently.
Okay, cool.
I don't know about what the other characters that we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there were always these rumors and stories and things like that about changing the gender. And I don't think that's really what we're talking about here. I think what we're talking about is this is just a tug of war between 2 political parties, and this just happens to be something that's cut in the middle, right? I think when it comes down to either way, we look at it, NPR and PBS get about 1%, if that, 1%, if that, of their funding from the government. So is this something that we really should be spending congressional hearings on? Is this really, and again, this is something that when the Democrats are in charge, they're trying to up the funds. And so with Republican, it's just this tug of war football thing. And I think it's just, it goes to show you that as I was reading this, I'm just saying to myself, of all the problems in the world that we have, right? Why is this the one that's here? Now, remove the money? Fine. I'm sure they'll get their 1%. Don't remove the money. I'm not sure I'm going to really be up in arms about it. But it seems like there's a lot of Republicans that are up in arms about it right now, including President Trump. And I think when President Trump tries to put his thumb on the scale, it's likely going to happen.
We also had another comment saying Marjorie Taylor Greene is not comparable to AOC.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty fair.
No. I don't mean in ideology. I mean in extremism. I'm sorry. Yeah. The first time I ever saw Marjorie Taylor Greene, she was actually on a documentary espousing the conspiracy theories of QAnon. All right? I'm sorry. Once you're a QAnon person and you're like promoting that, I'm done. I don't think you're anywhere near the middle. I would totally disagree with you on that. Just like when you have AOC says during January 6th she was afraid for her life, but she wasn't even in the Capitol building. Again, espousing things that aren't true, espousing things that are just total exaggerations. That's what I mean. They are the exaggerators of the party. So, absolutely.
Also, same commenter is their choice to end those. I'm not sure what you were referring to when it comes to end those and maybe funding.
There is. I mean, Congress can just end it. Congress can just pass a law and say we're going to defund this or we're not going to fund this anymore.
Well, I don't know if that's what he was referring to.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure, but
yeah, NPR and PBS. Yes, those are given grants through the Department of Education. So if Trump gets his wish to end the Department of Education,
those grants disappear.
A lot of those grants will disappear. So yes, those are funded. So those grants that are coming, again, it's 1% of the funding. Again, it's a culture war. And I'm not really sure this is really where I can't have my Congress talking about it. So later in the hearing, now the Democrats were having fun. They were saying sarcastically, "Is Elmo now, or has he ever been a member of the Communist Party?"
Sorry, what?
Yeah. This is what the Democrats were saying. And then leave Elmo alone. Bring Elon in for questioning instead. So James Comer, Republican from Kentucky, sharply criticized NPR's coverage of the origins of COVID-19, which, again, they lean towards the left, but then so do a lot of media outlets.
At the time, everyone was just trying to play it safe. They didn't want to seem like they were the odd one out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because at that point, credibility was really important to have. It's a global pandemic. People are relying on their source of news that they already are used to give them accurate information. And even though Trump ended up being, I think, correct with the whole Wuhan lab, because that's pretty much where it originated from, in the end, I think early on it just was too early.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Comer had an interesting question here. Why is NPR even doing editorials? Because editorials really aren't news, they're opinions. And he says, do you even need opinions if you're a federally funded entity that's supposed to provide the news, right? So what do you need? The news shouldn't have an editorial. And then so the CEO of NPR, she goes, editorial standards are for our journalism, bringing in more editors to make sure that we have more points of view reflected in every story. I've engaged in a number of actions, she said. But Representative Comer cut her off and says, I've lost confidence in public radio. I do want to say that NPR acknowledges that we were mistaken in failing to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story more aggressively and sooner. So again, it goes back to that, So there is some things there.
Also, thank you, Kentucky the Atheist, for the comments. He's also commented again saying, why are we taking and this is a good question, why are we taking one of the only educational channels off the TV while shuttering the Department of Education?
That's a good point. And I think we talked about that a little already. This is when I grew up, PBS and NPR, they existed first of all, PBS existed for kids like me, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have tutors. I had regular public education. And a lot of these are for rural or for inner city kids that didn't have access to the type of education that a lot of other kids did, right? And it was just maybe the only source of information. Not everybody had a library card. Not everybody had a ride to the library. Not everybody could get to the library. Mm-hmm. There wasn't media like there is today. There isn't social media. There isn't free media, or whatever you want to call it.
You can teach yourself just on that.
Exactly. Even though, and still, there's not a lot of internet access is still a question. So yes, again, that would be my main concern is what do we replace this with if we get rid of it? Right?
Because you have to have something there to fall back on.
Yeah. As someone who was at a point in time a teacher, way long ago. I don't even know if I qualify to be a teacher anymore. I don't think I could pass that test anymore. I think I learned a lot from. There are still things like I'll go back and on YouTube and I could. I say Sesame Street, and I see from like the 1970s, late 1970s. There are skits and things like that I'm like, I remember that. I remember that's where I learned that. I remember that lesson. As far as the Department of Education goes, I think the Department of Education is a different story. The Department of Education, when it was created, it hasn't done what it needs to do. It doesn't teach people anything.
Well, it was meant to kind of maintain standards because we gave a lot of freedom to states, and the idea was that the states knew what they knew best. And to a certain degree, I think they do know what's best for their people. But sometimes they don't hold the same standards that they probably should across the country. And I think the whole idea was that if you had a Department of Education, you could somehow, through testing, raise education levels, literacy rates, arithmetic. And it just, I don't think it's really worked out too well in the end here so far. I'm not saying shutting down the department is exactly the greatest thing in the world. I look at it this way. I think there should be some national standard.
I look at it this way. I think it didn't work. That the whole nationalized, standardized testing thing didn't work during George W. Bush's era. The reason why is because what teachers end up doing is they end up teaching to the test instead of teaching what's going on. So that whole idea. So that's a whole story.
The problem is the test, I think, in that situation.
But the Department of Education, when you look at when the Department of Education was implemented, and then you look at the steady decline in the achievements of our students based off of worldwide standards, we went from being some of the most educated kids to just, being at the bottom of the barrel, but we're spending the most amount of money. When Trump says that, you may not like it, but that is something that he's correct about. So I look at it like this. I look at it from a business standpoint, and I go back to Lee Iacocca, CEO of Chrysler. He had this thing, it's called, he said, if the department is at the bottom 10%, cut it. Doesn't care what it is, cut it, get rid of it because it's not profitable or it's not doing its job. Right now, the Department of Education has proven that over the last 30, 40 years, it hasn't done its job. It's failed to do what it needs to do. And as radical of an idea as shutting down a department is, it's as radical as an idea of creating it in the first place. So just because you created something doesn't mean you have to keep it. I would be all right with it being downsized incredibly and getting a lot of the standards out of the federal government. The last thing I think the federal government should be doing is trying to educate anybody. I don't think they should be in the business of education any which way, shape, and form. I think that should be left to the states and the teachers unions and the PTAs and all that stuff and the parents and the communities with some very thin guidance federally.
Got a couple of comments we're going to catch up. First, I do kind of agree. Legacy media is a bit corrupt to the bone. And by a bit, I mean quite a bit. Yeah. I mean, you could look at CNN, Fox. I mean, any of these big news corporations, they all have their own agenda. There's some corruption. They're all pulling for certain candidates and others, even if they're even part of the same party, they're trying to get rid of. So I believe, I agree with you. Corruption's there. I like to think we're not as corrupt as some countries, but, I leave room to be surprised. Right after.
Well, let me just hold on before you go on there. We live in a foreign country. We're coming to you from a foreign country,
right?
And I'll be honest with you, it's pretty bad in the United States.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty bad in the United States. It's
down here. There's way worse corruption. You don't see it as much.
You don't see it. It's hidden. It's hidden. In the United States, you see it. But yeah, it's pretty bad. And so I think it's just one of those things where we've gotten to the point where we just have to get to the point where we get our own sources.
And then we also, so just trying to catch up here with the Kentucky Atheist. Thank you again for the comments. We always appreciate engagement. It's just a lot more fun. Continuing with the point, this is kind of where actually I agree with him a little bit. They did try this with states and it kind of failed. They letting the states kind of determine the education curriculum. And you can kind of see that throughout the country. I mean, each state is ranked based on their education systems. And, there's a ranking for a reason because states sometimes are incapable of figuring out how to properly educate the people of their state. So I think that is the reason why the Department of Education was created. I agree with you with that. And I think there should be some form of federal regulation in terms of standardization of like requirements.
Well, let me ask you this question. If we're going to if we're going to stay with the federal system, we have to look at some of the best and the best.
Right.
And model them, right?
Yeah.
So let's look at how does China ensure that their students are in the top 5 of math and science every year? I don't know. It's a legitimate question. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I would honestly take a look at foreign countries and see what they implemented. Of course, it's harder implemented in the U.S. in terms of like population size, how big of a country we are, and how different. We in a way we have so many. Each state is like its own country in a way if you think about it. In terms of how different it is in the situations and even the economies, right? So I think we do need some sort of standard regulation of some sort or minimum requirements, some federal body. I think the Department of Education should survive to an extent. I think what they've done hasn't been as effective. I'd like to see that change. And I think he does bring up a point. He's concerned about private companies to make for-profit public education. I'm not exactly sure how that would work, but I think it is a concern if you leave.
I know what he's saying. I get what he's saying.
Charter schools. I mean, charter schools, some of them are good. A lot of them are not. He's got a point there.
Listen, I think private corporations have no business in public education. They just don't. Because an entity is always, you're never going to find an entity that's just for itself. That's totally like charitable. Like it's always going to have something that it wants for itself, implement for itself. There's no way you can allow private corporations. I don't think that would be the case. I don't think that you could allow that at all. I think what you're looking at though, if you do a state by state educational system, I think what you're going to find is that you're breaking up a very large, let's just call it what it is, a very large sort of unionized political, and that's really what gets in the way of education is a lot of either the unions or the corporations that are involved in education that are trying to make money and trying to use it as a money-making process. I think you lessen that a little bit. I think you get that out of the federal government, and once they don't have federal influence, I think it lessens. I just remember that I grew up, in a time where the states still had a lot of control over what they could teach and what they were supposed to teach in their standards. And I think when I went to school, what I was learning, and of course, when I saw what you were bringing home, I thought to myself, I learned a hell of a lot more in my school time and a lot more quality education than what my kids were getting. So I see the downturn. I absolutely see the downturn. Now, I think there's a lot of inequality that goes on in education as well. I think if we're going to break it down by state, I think the one thing that we have to ensure is that, the kids in, I don't know, Florida or Texas don't have unequal access to, say, AP standard classes than, say, the kids in, I don't know, throwing out Detroit, all right, or something like that. I think that's a concern. So, but I think the Department of Education is going to go bye-bye. I think that's a reality at this point. It's going to be shrunk to that's what we're going to have to live with. But right now, again, with the way standards are and the way things are right now, I don't cry either way.
And then, like I said, we're going to keep on continuing with these kind of good comments here. He argues the Department of Education did their job. Education was destroyed by our government.
Well, the Department of Education is government.
So kind of hand in hand. At least that's kind of how I view it. They want uninformed voters. I hope they don't want uninformed voters because that's kind of their work population. But I can maybe...
That's uninformed. People say uninformed voters. That's the voters' fault.
Yeah.
I don't blame anybody else. I'm informed not because of anywhere I went to school. Or because of anybody else telling me. I'm informed because I want to be informed. All right? It's a choice. That's a personal choice. That's accountability. I'm informed. He's informed. If someone out there is not informed, okay, we'll take it this way. You pay a lot of attention to politics.
Yeah.
Your brother does not.
No, yeah, he's pretty clueless about what happens around the country.
And that's a choice.
And to be fair, his life doesn't really revolve around it. He doesn't have much interest in it. And that's fair. He doesn't really need it. He's a chef. He likes cooking. He loves cooking. He's a culinary, I want to say, expert to an extent. And that's his world. And to him, politics and just doesn't really matter to him. And that's fine. Now, you brought up a point here, Kentucky Atheist, saying red states are the worst when ranked by education, which also correlates with the poorest states. Now, I'm going to look at the top 10, or the top 10, or what would you call it? The last 10? Not the top 10, bottom 10. Bottom 10, sorry. I was trying to say it in Spanish.
Sure.
The bottom 10, I have two rankings here. I have usnews.com, and then I have what is, I believe, called World Population Review. These are two websites. I'm pretty sure usnews.com is pretty reliable in terms of rankings. However, they take into account opportunities for further education, higher education. So that means colleges and universities. So this is where this gets skewed a bit more.
That will skew it. Yeah.
That will skew it. So I have this other one, which is, I think, purely public school rankings. And this is by 2025. We're going to kind of see here the bottom 10 because I am actually curious. So we have on the World Population Review, which is strictly, I think, public schools according to how they polled this. Mm-hmm. Number 50 is Arizona, which is a surprise to me, actually. I thought Arizona would be higher.
That's not really a traditionally Republican state, even though it swung this way this election.
Louisiana.
That's a Republican state.
Nevada. That doesn't surprise me.
That is not a Republican
That's a swing state.
That usually votes Democrat.
I went red last time.
Just last time.
Yeah, but still, it's a swing state. Yep. So I don't call
New Mexico. That is a Democratic state.
Well, New Mexico is just, I don't know if you've been to New Mexico, barren.
New Mexico's
I'm
terrible.
not surprised.
If you're from New Mexico, I'm sorry.
New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, don't surprise me. So we have two swing states, a Republican state, a Democrat state. Then we have Alabama.
That's Republican?
Republican, that's understood. I'm not surprised again. We've driven through those parts. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. South Carolina.
Yep.
Oklahoma.
Yep. Republican.
Not surprising. North Carolina, swing state. Florida. Republican.
Florida's
It's no longer swing state. It's Florida. Tennessee. And then number 40, California. So you're not wrong. Not a majority. I guess it is a majority, right? Is it a majority of Republican states down here?
Probably 6 or 7.
Six or seven here, right? If I'm counting right. Tennessee, Florida, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Alabama.
But you take the population of California and it makes up for most of those states.
Unfortunately, it's just California.
So I think to break it down by Republican, Democrat is not a fair thing.
I think it's fair to break it down more economic-wise. Like
I think economically, absolutely.
New Mexico doesn't surprise me. Nevada doesn't surprise me. Those states are not like states that are filled with cash, right? Whereas California has, an economy that rivals countries. It can be a top 10 economy. If you just separate California on its own, it's like what, a top 10, top 15?
California, as of 3 years ago, would have been the 5th largest economy in the world by itself.
So my point being, and I think with that, I think my point is, even though, yes, you're to an extent correct, I think seeing California at 40 is way more concerning than seeing Alabama. Of course, I would love to see Alabama raise its education. I think it should. But California at 40 is honestly, that should be at least top 15 with the money they make in terms of taxes.
But I think economics, to zero in on economics and not political bias, is where you have to go. Again, as someone who was in a classroom, it really does boil down to, when you become a teacher and you have to worry about entering your own or inserting your own personal finances into teaching, because the state or the federal government won't do it for you or give you enough to do it.
That's concerning.
That's concerning. But we are spending more on average per child than any other country out there and not getting the results. So yes, I think economics are skewed in different ways that are unequal and that are hurting a lot of students out there. But we are not spending the money wisely either. Per student, we are not focused on getting them the right things. I used to work for a charity. When I worked for Target, we did a charity. We would go and we would refurbish out of charitable contributions. We would refurbish public school. Get this, public school libraries in the poorest areas of Boston. And so I remember one we went into. It was literally a closet. I said, "This is their library." And we literally built them a library. We almost built them like a whole section of a building on a piece of land that they weren't using and connected it. And it was literally a closet. It had books that were tattered, torn, ripped. You couldn't even read half of them. You couldn't figure out what book they were. And so with all the money that we spend, and we can't get them a proper library.
It is concerning. Now, continuing with the comments, obviously, I'm not surprised you are from Kentucky. It is in your name. I do hope you do understand your sources. I'm sure you do. You do a political show. I would love to know what political show you do. That'd be very interesting to actually go check it out. And I'm sure you do see plenty of corruption in the South. I'm not surprised. I mean, just in general in the U.S., you can see corruption really anywhere. And I'm glad at least you don't disagree with restructuring education, because I think we should at the very least restructure it, because clearly it's not worked. I don't agree exactly with getting rid of the Department of Education fully. I think there should be something there. Okay. And obviously, you do have a problem that they are ripping apart all these programs so that the funding can be given to the top 1%. I don't think that's why they're getting rid of these programs. I don't think the funding's going to the top 1%. I don't think, at least I would hope it's not. I don't have exactly
the thing is, I have
information on that to really make a fair comment.
Yeah, I don't think they haven't really given a budget or a spending program right now. So there's nothing that's been passed or nothing that's been considered within Congress for a budget. So again, I would say I would hold off on that before I'd say they're giving it 1%.
Right, and then obviously he disagrees with your idea that it's he thinks it's not the voters' fault in terms of education, because he argues when the schools don't educate them to even know how government works or ban the books that tell its history. Now, the book stuff, I don't think we're banning really many history books. I know about the books that they were banning because of DEI stuff.
Yeah,
but in terms of the education system themselves, again, state by state basis, in terms of federal government as well, with the regulatory system of the Department of Education, it's kind of the government's fault. I think that's why people are frustrated with the Department of Education.
No, listen, I went out on my own and bought Howard Zinn's, People's History of the United States, an extremely liberal version of the United States history, and I read it. I disagree with most of it. Again, you're going to get what you're going to get. It comes down to what happens in that home. It happens. Again, if you're going to rely on government to do this, again, relying on government for anything, including education, to be correct. If the parents aren't there and the kids aren't given the right choices or given the right opportunities or right resources, they're going to grow up uninformed. But then again,
true.
Even if they grow up uninformed, when they become adults, it's their job to get informed. If they think hey, I don't know, and they don't understand something, they don't know how something works, they're going to go find it out.
Sure, and I think it's the job and the responsibility of government to provide those opportunities, public libraries, sources of information. I think that's important because, there are people who are not great at school and don't really learn much, but when they become an adult, they want to learn, they have the desire, and sometimes they don't know where to look, and I think it's a good idea that the government has something in place. I have a hard time. I understand what he's saying. I get the whole uninformed thing. I agree. I get what you're saying. I have a hard time labeling most people as uninformed.
Not uninformed, but just unwilling to want the information. I think when you find someone who's willing to want the information, they're willing to receive it. or willing to go get it. It's people who, most people I think you're talking about are not uninformed, just unwilling, or just don't care to have it. They don't care. We have kids graduating that can't do simple math. Never mind understand how the government works. So I think we're putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, I think we're failing a lot of places, if not everywhere. I think as an education system. So I think we all agree on that. I think we disagree obviously with how we want to do it. You disagree with me a bit. I disagree with you. Yeah. And we did all disagree. Yeah. Which is fine.
As a teacher, the thing is when you're in a classroom and you're said, you have your hands tied by certain standards and regulations as saying you need to teach to a certain ideology or certain things like that. That's when, again, it became frustrating, right? If you can't introduce new concepts or introduce new ideas that's when it becomes frustrating. But you're doing that to educate. You're not doing that to influence. Okay, you're doing that as a compare and contrast, and that's the thing I think we've gotten away from. We're not doing it to inform. We're doing it to influence. And I think that's what the problem with education is. It's no longer about information. It's about influencing. And again, I'll leave my teaching hat right there.
Now, also, he argued with the whole, because we took a look at this top or bottom 10, I should say, rankings. Sure. He was criticizing us a little bit for saying all those red states fell below it, and California is what you focus on. That's not a fair view. I think.
Well, no, that's not all red states. Nevada and Arizona, which were right there, New Mexico, those are not red states. Those are traditionally Democratic voting blocks.
Okay, Arizona.
No, Arizona had a Democratic congressman, Democratic senator,
but
Democratic governor.
It swings. It's a swing state. I'm not going to call it Arizona.
The last time it swung to Republican was George W. Bush.
No, it was Republican also when Trump won in 2016, I'm pretty sure. It went red, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think so.
I believe so. Listen, I'm not going to call Arizona a liberal state. I'm going to call it a swing state because that's what it is.
But Nevada,
New Mexico is a blue state. Nevada is also a swing state that leans blue. That's what I say. It leans blue because usually it does lean blue, but sometimes it goes red like last election.
But here's the problem.
Hold on. Wait, no. Let me continue real quickly. Okay, real quickly, just so I can finish this little point. North Carolina, that's another swing state. And yes, you are right. There are 6 to 7 others, depending on how you count some of these states as red states that do fall below the line. And I do understand why you think it's unfair that we focus on California. I think it is a little different because if you look at all these states outside of Florida, these states do not have a comparable economy nor population to that state.
Yeah.
I think Florida is the only one you can compare it to. And I think Florida and California is 40 and 42 is a disgrace. They should be higher. All of these states should be higher. The education system should be better.
But here's the problem. Education should never be a red or blue thing.
No, it should be.
And to blame it on red or blue, there are bad educational policies in blue states. There are bad educational policies in red states. It's not a question of red or blue. It's a question of, again, we're not there to inform kids. We're there to influence them. And that's what needs to change. And I think on either side. But I think there we go. Like, again, there's politics getting in the way of education. Again, I understand your point, but you're also proving mine by saying it's red, it's blue, it's this. No. Take the politics out of education will be a lot better.
I think it would be. I will actually add something to his point. But before I do that, he does agree our education has been destroyed over decades by both sides. I think that's fair. It's been falling on the world stage. It's very clear. I actually studied abroad in Europe, and the arithmetic you start doing in university in Italy is arithmetic that you barely start touching on in high school. But they learn all of that in their own high school called Liceo. That's what they call high school in Italy. We are far behind, far behind. In every single sense of the word. I mean, some of them even speak better English than some of the study abroad students from the U.S. that we would have there. So I think you are absolutely right when it comes to our education system falling behind the rest of the world. They have made a budget; it just hasn't been passed. Is there a budget waiting for the education?
They have a budget. They had a continuing resolution, which is different than a budget. All right, that's a CR is got some changes and amendments to it, but that's different from a budget because they didn't want a government shutdown. They have not officially released a budget, and they have not asked for funding. Those are one of the congressional committees that I do watch a lot. Is the Finances Committee. Now I found something. So it's a little bit of yes, but mostly no. So you do have a little bit of point. I looked up U.S. News World Report.
I'm using a different. That includes higher education.
It does, but it gives you preschool through K-12.
Right.
It's number 10, Florida. Number 1 is Massachusetts, our home, and I do believe that Massachusetts did have great. And we saw it change when we left and went to a different state.
Yeah.
Utah is in the top 10. We've got New Jersey, Colorado, Wisconsin, Wyoming.
The bottom 10 on this is very different.
Virginia.
So that's what I was going to get into when I was talking about and let me add some points to his point and also after, because I was going to take a look at the U.S. News and kind of discuss their bottom 10 in comparison and also talk about their top 10. So if you can actually keep the top 10 there, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
But real quickly, addressing a few of these. I don't know about this. Apparently, they're banning certain school books about slavery.
No, what they're banning is there's a project called there's too many. You actually alluded it to it yourself about corporations, not just corporations, but there are too many groups, whether they're think tanks or whatever it is out there, nonprofits that have their own idea of what they want history to be, and it's on both sides. And so they're getting rid of things that are just really, honestly, there's I'll give you an example. There's the 1619 Project, which is an extremely liberal project that seeks to have a version of history that is skewed very progressive and liberal. And then there's a, what is the one that they always accuse Trump of being a part of? The 2025 Project or something like that, or Project 2025. They have their own influence where they're trying to get their own textbooks in. It's not just they're trying to, depending on who's in charge and who's in front of the school board, those are the books they're really trying to get rid of and trying to get back to some more semblance of order. Now, if you're telling me that they're banning now the schools that are like, hey, we're going to ban Harry Potter because we don't like witchcraft. All right, that's the stupidity you and I can both agree on, right?
Yeah, Harry Potter's not doing anything wrong.
If they're telling me they're banning Fahrenheit 451 because they think it's a dangerous book, they can go screw. Or the Catcher in the Rye. No, those are the books that should be left alone. Those are the books that should be celebrated and things like that. Brave New World, Animal Farm, Lord of the Flies, things like that. If those classics are being touched, or the new classics are being touched, then we got a problem. But if it's coming from a group that's trying to skew history because of a certain bias, either left or right, those are the books that are being banned. And it depends on what state you're in and which way they're going.
Right. Now, I'm going to stay on this little list that I have here, the World Population Review.
Sure.
Because that's the one I was using prior, because it's just I couldn't figure out how to get to the pre-K through 12, which you have up there. Yeah. On this list, the top 10 states are New Jersey, which is a little surprising to me, New Hampshire, not surprising, Connecticut, pretty good, Vermont, Massachusetts, New York, Maine, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Virginia. Now, this includes quality, safety, and student success, and then it creates a score and ranking based off of that. That's the top 10. To his credit, I mean, if you're going to make it a red and blue state kind of thing, I mean, the only state you could maybe argue here that's red and it's not is Virginia.
Virginia and New Hampshire, they used to be red states.
They used to be red, but they're middle.
Yeah. There's no doubt New England, especially Massachusetts, are the best. I mean, that's where I was. That's where I taught. That's where I got my teaching certificate. Absolutely. Massachusetts has earned the best for pre through K-12. Absolutely. Florida, though, has earned its spot in the top 10.
They've done a lot of good work, I think.
Utah, extremely conservative. They've earned their spot as number 6. New Jersey, number 2. Okay, I can see that. Colorado, that got number 12. Wisconsin, number 8. I can see that, absolutely. Let's see here. Connecticut, 3. New Hampshire, 4. Virginia, New York. New York's got an educational system now.
And it should, again, New York, those states in the Upper East Coast, they have the money. They should be top 10. I mean, it's where most of the Ivy League schools are. I would imagine their public school systems are just as good. I mean, I was there. But on that same list, right, I'm going to go down to the bottom 10 because it does vary differently because I think they don't take into account student safety and stuff like that.
Yeah, while you do that, I'm going to try and find the exact criteria that they use for this.
For this one, yeah. All right. So the bottom on this is on usnews.com now. Bottom 10, Louisiana. Now, Louisiana is doesn't surprise me. South Carolina, Delaware, kind of sad. Alabama, Oregon. That's a surprising one. Oregon to be in the bottom 10. Yeah. Nevada, a repeat there. West Virginia. See, I'm surprised West Virginia wasn't on the bottom 10 of the other list. This list is number 46.
Again, someone who's been I've been
Arizona. Let me continue with this list: Arizona, Alaska, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. So it looks like California escapes the bottom 10 here. It's only it's number 37 out of 50. So it's only moved up a few states. He does have a bit of a decent point there. I will give him credit for that. Maybe there's something to learn when it comes to that. Maybe not the influence part if they have influence in those states, which some of them do. I won't lie. There is a bit of an agenda in certain classrooms, and when it comes to those states, as I went through it. But they do have a good education system. That you cannot deny that.
Best state category. Okay, so the best state rankings. This is their methodology. Education. Let's see what their education was. No, I don't want to see the list again. I want to see
the criteria.
Yeah, the criteria.
You can tell me where to look. I have it. I already did the whole sign up thing.
We're just rankings. Here we go.
I'm on the rankings.
Rankings, education, states. I just put in state usnews.com, and that's the thing. I get very concerned when I can't find the rankings or you can't find the methodology.
Here, I got it.
You got it?
I just pressed the link. So the methodology here. All right. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, no, see, it doesn't give you the methodology. It just gives you the categories again. That's my concern. Because someone who, again...
No, this is rankings of the states in general. Yeah. This is states ranking. This is not education.
Yeah.
Right. Where is education?
It brings you right back to the ranking.
Bring you back there. Okay.
So as someone who, like I myself, I'm trained in statistics because I'm a political science master's candidate.
That's why I kind of like the other
Unless I can see the methodology, I'm going to have trouble with the actual rankings. I'm going to have trouble with any poll, anything. I have to be able to see the methodology. If the methodology is hidden, because if they're just basing it, I'll give you this. If they're basing it off of just what states do the best when it comes to the No Child Left Behind Act, which means which states test better.
That's different.
That's different because then you're just teaching to the test. Because
I know people who are fantastic at tests, but outside of the test, they can't make a decision to save their life.
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that. It's just they're very indecisive, and I think education should help you be less indecisive, at least be able to be more functional in life. But I'm going to go back to your comments here real quickly. You argue, of course, if we don't teach our kids the history and events that we overcame and how our government works, then we can't expect them to even gain that interest. I agree. How can we interest our youth if we can't even teach them properly about our history?
But we are
at a high standard.
But that's the problem. We're not. We're more worried about teaching them things about social engineering.
Not just that, right, but also to a test.
Or teaching to a test, or teaching to get a metric, or teaching them so they can qualify for more money for the funding. That's not what we've been,
Yeah, I think what has happened is the Department of Education has now become not only too test focused, but concerned with politics itself when it should never have been influenced or concerned with politics.
Yeah,
I think education should be neutral, at least as neutral as it can be. Of course, I know a teacher is going to have its own bias, and they're going to obviously have some of that influence their curriculum or their opinions that they express in the classroom, and that's fine. Again, people are people. If parents have a problem with that, they can obviously have a teacher, not have a teacher be changed, but change the teacher that their student is learning from. They can put them in a different class in the same school, or they can take them to a different public school in the same area. We have options. I think my concern, of course, is letting it become a social messaging place, which I do not want, right or left.
Okay, so here's my problem with this. So Consumer Affairs, which has a similar ranking. Here they give me the methodology. 30 points for K through 12 performance. We're going to talk about this. What's the public high school 4-year graduation rate in 2022? All right. Their graduation rate. So kids are dropping out. So is that about education, or is that about how the kids' lives are personally, right? If a kid has a crappy life and a crappy home life and most likely he's going to drop out. So is that a problem with the education system, or is that a problem with just the family dynamics? All right. And that is something I can tell you is absolutely true because I've seen it. Average SAT scores. I thought we'd gotten rid of SAT scores. I thought they were no longer a thing, but now they are. Average ACT score. So it's basically how well are you testing. Average national assessment of education. Again, that's to scoring the test for 4th graders and 8th graders. So we're teaching to the test. So those 30 points, those mean nothing to me. right? That's got nothing to do with how good an education system is. All right, school funding and resources. The school funding and resources score is based on 4 metrics. Expenditures per student. Who cares how much we're spending on each student? We're spending more money on students. It's not getting us anywhere. Pupil to teacher ratio, that's important, okay?
Yeah,
but
listen, if you don't have enough teachers, and trust me, there was a school in my school district for high school. Remember it? Pearland High School,
Yeah.
I think it was.
yeah,
This was back in Texas. There were 2 schools there that you go for high school. Actually 3, but really only 2. Glenna Dawson, Pearland High. Pearland High had so many more students and so few teachers.
Yeah.
And because of that, they didn't have the greatest education in comparison to Glenna Dawson, which at the time still had a decent ratio. By the time I graduated, that ratio had become out of whack. There were now more students than there really were teachers to handle. And you obviously see a decline in education for that. And I think that's actually an important statistic.
this is that might be the most important one, along with how much you're paying a teacher. Because let me tell you something.
A motivated teacher is a good teacher.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. The reason I didn't become a teacher is because I could go work for Target and make 6 times what they wanted to pay me as a public school teacher, which was at that time before taxes. Get this: someone who would with an advanced degree, $19,000 per year before tax. You can't live on that. We couldn't live on that then, right? So again, how much you're paying the teachers, how many teachers you have, those I can say are really important. Now the thing about teachers with advanced degrees, well, if you don't pay teachers enough, they can't afford to get an advanced degree. They can't afford to pay off the student loans. Higher education quality, we're not going to get it. Safety. Okay, we can talk about safety.
Safety is kind of you don't want to. The environment's also kind of important.
So the number of gun violent incidents at all schools per 100,000 students, again, that's skewed.
Yeah,
you can't do that, right?
But it's still it's something you should consider when it comes to what school you put your student in, or you're not student, but your kid in. But
I mean, no offense, they say Boston, they say Massachusetts has got the best. Hey, in Boston, I just remember just being gun violence everywhere in the schools, around the schools. Like
Southie,
Southie. So I'm like,
was rough.
I wouldn't call that number 1. Maybe overall, Massachusetts number 1. I wouldn't call that number 1.
I think overall it'd be number 1, but yeah, I understand that. I think safety it's a little iffy when it comes to how you rank that. Even this methodology is a little the first list I was using. It does use some of the similar qualifications. But obviously, I think they vary a little bit in terms of what they value more.
But this right here, this is all BS. This is you're teaching to a test. This does nothing. You're teaching to a test.
Scores do matter to an extent. You know what I mean? But they shouldn't be everything. Because somebody can score poorly on the SAT, but still be a fantastic member of society in a trade or even maybe a specific part of their education. You know what I mean?
Well, I thought this was racist too. They told me forever. For the last 10 years, I've been told the SATs are racist.
Okay, but let me catch up on some comments here from Kentucky Atheists. Again, thank you very much. We love the engagement. You're asking if we can make you a mod so you can post a link. I don't think we can make you a mod. A mod would be like he has certain privileges within the chat.
You know what? That is beyond me right now.
I don't even think you know how to. I think I would know maybe how to, but we don't do that to other members of the chat just because we're still a little small. We're not really sure what this is. This is just a father-son thing. Shits and giggles. But
you're more than welcome to post whatever you want.
He can't post a link because he's not a mod. Normal chatters. So if you want to tell us the information, you're more than welcome to either copy and paste it here to an extent, or you can actually maybe tell us the website and what to exactly look up and see if we can find the link that way. And we'll take a look at whatever information you want to show us. But unfortunately, we can't grant you permissions as a mod to post a link. It's just a little beyond us right now. And not that we don't trust you, but you are technically a stranger.
But you're all cool. Don't get me wrong.
You're all cool. But, and if those are the problems, then we invest in our kids' future and fix it to compete with the world, not dismantle it and throw your hands up and go back to the way we know was a failure.
I don't know if we know that it was a failure.
Yeah.
I don't know if we know that was a failure. I feel like we had a lot more smarter people in the 50s and the 60s than we do now. At least that's how I think of this. Even the early 70s.
No, I do agree with him here. But this is where me and you differ in terms of testing scores. The tests it tests the knowledge, in terms of SAT and ACT, he's referring to, it tests the knowledge that the kids have. You can't just dismiss the testing. It's the one thing
I don't dismiss the testing.
If they are learning certain things.
I've been told all along that testing was, I've been told by people who are a little bit more liberal than I am, that testing was unfair. Testing wasn't a true indicator of how smart somebody was. I was told testing was racist. I was told that testing was an unfair way to segregate kids who had different qualities. So I don't disagree with you. I don't mind testing, but I do want fair testing.
Yeah, fair testing I'm fair for fair testing. I want testing because I think testing is important, but I don't think it should be everything you should be going towards.
No, not at all. And this is funny too, because like performance rank here, this thing is so weird. Overall.
Yeah, how they rank it is the different sections.
Overall education rank, they give New York a 2, but the K through 12 performance rank is 31.
Right, but they have certain things that they excel at that somehow boost their ranking up to 2. I know it's a little weird. Each list is a little different. They value it a little differently. He does agree with us that paying teachers more is something that we should do. I think we should be paying public workers more in general. I mean, listen, I love baseball, but when I see Juan Soto on the Mets get a $53 million contract, I look at a firefighter, a police officer, a teacher, or even like a nurse who's just starting off in their career, who contributes significantly to society and either saving lives, protecting people, or even educating the future of our country or nation, earn barely enough to survive. I look at that and I'm like, oh, I wish we could donate some money.
That's just the values of the society that they put. It's like it's open market.
It's open market, and with that, I think you got to maybe try to obviously convince.
To be a teacher, you got to want to be a teacher. Teacher's not a fallback position. If anybody who goes into teaching thinking that this is a fallback position, good luck.
Now, also, he gave me the website. It's called the Nation's Report Card.
Oh yeah, I know what that is.
Gov. If you want to open that up real quickly.
Yeah, I know what that is. Yeah. Hold on 1 second.
Testing has problems, he says. In order to get fair testing, you would have to get rid of the systematic racism that is baked into the system. I don't fully agree with you that there is racism necessarily in the system. I'm mixed, but no one really calls me mixed. I'm brown for the most part to most people. And I was never really treated any differently, and I lived and was educated in 3 different states. In particular, if you're interested, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Texas. I completed my high school education in Texas. Most of my middle school and intermediary work that laid the foundation for that.
I would say
Michigan, which was fantastic. The schools in Michigan,
okay.
I loved.
Here's where it's not. I don't think it's baked into the system. I think it's not baked into the test. Here's where I have a problem with inequality in education.
Right. I think we'll agree on this one.
The inequality in education comes from you have districts that have a lot of tax dollars that get a lot of tax dollars back put into education, whereas the districts that are filled with poor and mostly minority communities and minority individuals don't get the funding that the rich areas get. There is your inequality. And then it just comes out in the testing.
Yeah, it's just, and that just comes down to management of city resources. I mean, Houston, for instance, with Third Ward, that place does not have good education. We can assure you that district is a mess. But in comparison to probably Sugarland is probably fantastic in comparison.
Yeah,
I'll give it higher.
I did some subbing at a place called Bancroft High School in central Worcester, Massachusetts. That was in a bad area or a depressed or poor area. Mm-hmm. Believe me, that school did not get the money it needed to survive. It could barely afford windows.
Right.
It was ridiculous. It was like, this is what they call a school. Whereas I could have gone 3 miles across the way. It's a freaking palace because it's in
a nicer area.
And that is where your inequality comes from. That's where things need to stop.
The way districts are made and handled and how their resources are managed, and in terms of also money that the federal government gives out for schools, I think isn't given out in a proper way. I think that needs to be revitalized and revamped completely.
So if you don't have a proper learning environment for a kid, I don't care what his race is at that point in time, he's not going to do well on a test, or she's not going to do well on a test.
And if they're unlucky to be born in like the Bronx in New York City, those public schools are a mess unless he's able to afford private. But usually, if you're born in the Bronx or Queens, you're not getting private unless you're really well off,
or you testing into one of those special schools, or
exactly
things like that. You know, and again,
the Bronx School of Excellency, I think, is there, right? That's like a school for geniuses.
But there we go. All right. I think we've exhausted. I appreciate I just wanted to. There's a couple other articles I wanted to get to today. Yeah. So if you don't mind,
Kentucky Atheist. I would love to. Maybe next time we'll go more into education. So if you want to join us, what would be our next stream?
Saturday night.
Saturday night. You want to join us Saturday night? Saturday night or Monday. We're going to go back into education. We just have obviously a little bit of a schedule we want to follow. We did spend a lot more time on education than we wanted to. We would love to take a look at the nation's report card a little closer with you as well. And yeah, I think my experience is not the norm exactly. I was lucky in having wonderful parents and being able to excel in my education.
I went to a public. I
was in public my whole life. I didn't go private, but still, I am a little bit outside the norm.
I went to public up until 8th grade, and I begged to go to a private school after when it opened up for me, because where I was going to school, it was bad. It just was bad.
Yeah, listen, the school system needs overhaul, in my opinion. And I don't agree with getting rid of the Department of Education fully. I need it to change. I need you to go inside there and like clear house and just like, all right, this has not worked. We are falling behind. We do need a federal. Listen, we're too big of a country to not have some sort of federal regulatory body to govern the states. Because are you going to trust Alabama with their education system? Let's be honest, Gringo.
You know what? I don't know. The people of Alabama?
No. Louisiana?
But the thing is, it's like saying if you're not going to trust the people of Alabama with educating their children.
No, not that. I'm saying I'm not going to trust the state government to do it. I trust the people who want to educate.
I don't trust the federal government. I trust the federal government less than I trust state government.
Sure, but I think the federal government does.
Which is hard for me to say because...
I understand that. I think we disagree a little bit there.
Okay. All right, we're going to go on to the next one. This guy who has had the shittiest week.
Oh, real quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you again, Kentucky.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it. He's offered us if we want to maybe look him up and maybe sometime we can collaborate and talk. That might be interesting. I'm absolutely always open to that.
Take a screenshot, baby.
Take a screenshot. We'll have the chat here.
Yeah, we'll have the chat there.
Actually, I will take a screenshot just in case.
But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
But we're going to get on to this guy because he's had a pretty bad week, and I did want to talk about this, and I'm sure maybe even the Kentucky Atheists would have an opinion on this guy. Pete Hegseth. When he was announced as Secretary of Defense, I was skeptical, and I'm still a little skeptical. I know he's doing some things that he's falling in line with what Trump wants. Fine.
That's expected. That's expected. In the cabinet, right? You've got to fall in line.
Right? But here, I'm an Arab, so I think I can, here's my
You scarf. Don't look Arab, but trust me.
I don't look Arab. Trust me. I'm Arab.
I look Arab. I was in Egypt, and they were very happy to see me.
Very happy. So they're saying his Arabic tattoos stirs controversy, which I'm not really sure. It's a clear symbol of Islamophobia. No, a clear symbol of Islamophobia is when people look at me and don't want to have anything to do with me once they learn that I'm Arab. He has a tattoo of the word kafir, meaning infidel or non-believer, and it could offend Muslims. The reason why that would offend Muslims is because there's Islamic extremist groups which would call him an infidel or call him a non-believer because he does not practice the faith of Islam. He does not follow the Prophet Muhammad. Mm-hmm. He follows his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
So he got this tattoo kind of semi-ironically?
Yeah, semi-ironically, but also because he's in the military and was fighting against these people. I get it. Is it probably the most appropriate tattoo in the world to have?
No.
But as an Arab, I don't think we would... There's a lot more things that we would be offended by than the Secretary of Defense's tattoo, which we probably would never have known existed unless somebody said something. So... just looking through this,
we've learned a lot about his tattoos. Can I just say that that's what the third tattoo I've heard
of?
That's
the third tattoo.
He's got the cross of Jerusalem, which I think is kind of cool. But I guess it's not.
I mean,
Catholic. But
again, I think this article speaks more volumes about people of Islam or certain people within the Islam faith. That if someone describes themselves as an unbeliever or non-believer, that would offend somebody who does believe. Listen, I'm a Christian. If someone walks up to me and says, we have a discussion about religion and says, I don't believe in God, I'm cool with that. That don't offend me. Or if they say to me, I don't understand how you can believe in God, that don't offend me. I think the fact that it offends somebody, for somebody to say, I don't believe in this, or I don't believe in this faith, or I don't have spirituality, or whatever it is, however it might be, or I'm a non-believer. If that offends somebody, that's the problem, not the tattoo, okay? Because, again, everybody should have the right to believe in what they want or not to believe in what they want.
I agree with you there. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that if somebody has like a tattoo of a swastika, I'm not going to say that, oh, yeah, that's cool. I don't agree with it. Yeah. I mean, is it his right to have that tattoo if he wanted to? Sure. Because I'm of the belief that you are your own person. You have the right to do as you please, especially if you're an adult. Pretty much only if you're an adult. I mean, as a kid, you also have certain rights, but I'm not going to get into that exactly. But if you're an adult, you want to get a tattoo, you get a tattoo. Are people going to disagree with you and dislike you because of that? Sure. Is that their fault or your fault? I'm not going to say either or, because depending on the tattoo, it could be really offensive. And you're going to have to live with the consequences. You know what I mean? If you want the tattoo and you accept the social consequences of, hey, somebody might not be comfortable with that, that's fine. But that shouldn't hinder you from doing a job. Yeah. That should only hinder you in terms of your circle, circle of people, your circle of trust.
Now, a very strict interpretation of the word kafir, and I just looked it up because I want to make sure, because there's about 7 different ways you can interpret, because it's Arabic. There's 7 different ways you can, and I'll actually...
Yeah,
here we go.
It's a fun language.
Yeah. Just verbally expresses unbelief in something. It expresses unbelief through action. It expresses unbelief of convictions. It's a major... So if you say kafir akbar, that's a major unbelief. If you say kafir asgar, that's a minor unbelief. And then there's takfir a general charge of unbelief, i.e. charged against a community like Ahmadiyya. So basically what it means is that last one is really what they're really focusing on. It's a specific denial of the Prophet Muhammad and his teachings.
Which I don't think he intends. I think that's obviously...
I don't think he intends that at all.
I don't think that's clearly intended.
But then again, I don't care.
And I'll be honest, someone who was in the Middle East for a little bit, I'll be honest and say this. They are a lot of the people there, tolerant. Yeah. It really is just media that makes you think that people are intolerant. And I think that's really sad, because I was there, and even my school that did send me there it was a conference that we got to go participate. I won't go into many details right now. They even gave us a warning saying, hey, be careful, because we had 2 girls in our group and it was only us 2 guys. Now, they made me be the talker because my last name is Arabic, Lebanese, Syrian. But they quickly realized, it's a fine place. They're people. You know what I mean? It's like they do not really care. I mean, they have their own belief and their faith, and they love that faith, and that's awesome. They respect your faith as well.
But I would turn it right around and say the people who are espousing this and saying he's being anti-Islam or Islamophobic, I would say that there's plenty to point at on either side, because I'm pretty sure I can go on YouTube and figure out and find multiple instances of Islamic leaders denigrating my faith, denigrating my country, denigrating my beliefs, my value system in every which way, from here to Sunday and twice that day too. So it's like, okay, we're going to point at this guy. It's just an insincere, inauthentic.
It's not what
argument.
you should be focused on. That's what I say. Yeah. Not something that should be really affecting any politics. Because listen, if a world leader is upset with his tattoo, that's a problem with the world leader, because it shows that he probably shouldn't be a world leader, because it's a little childish to be like, I don't like the tattoo you have. But let's not talk about relations between our 2 countries and people.
But let's get back here. We were talking about the media earlier and NPR and whatnot. This is The Guardian, but here's where they lie. Here's where they don't tell you the truth. Here's where they skewer, right? They go, this is not the first time. Here we go. Let me get this. This is not the first time Hegseth has been involved in a tattoo-related controversy. The defense secretary has previously shown off tattoos that indicate a fascination with crusader aesthetics, an increasing trend among the far right. That's a load of bullshit. That is a lie. First of all, there's no crusader aesthetics that's increasing trend. First of all,
increasing trend where?
First of all, far right individuals are portrayed as backwoods hillbilly hicks that have no education. They wouldn't know what the crusade was if you tried to explain it to them over a cup of moonshine. They're not going to know what it is, right? Now, his prior contentious tattoo is located on his right bicep. Right next to the new one, it reads Deus Vult, which translates to God wills it in Latin.
Deus Vult.
Believed to be a crusader battle cry. No, it's not. Hegseth also has a tattoo on his chest of the Jerusalem cross, also known as the Crusaders' Cross, due to being popularized during the Christian Crusades. Okay, that's not why he has that. Do you know why he has that? Because in many churches, including the cathedral in Washington, the National Cathedral, when you walk in, you can find the Jerusalem cross, or if you want to call it the Crusaders cross, literally planted in the middle of the floor as part of the tile. You can find Deus Vult on the walls in the stained glass window. It's just a Christian thing. It's not meant to be like, we're going to go take over the Middle East. It has nothing to do with
Has it been used in that way? Deus Vult? I'm sure of it.
Sure.
But
has the word infidel and non-believer been used in a way to justify mass murder, genocide, terrorist acts?
Right.
Sure.
But those are all done by extremists. It's not the general consensus. So I don't think he has Deus Vult for that reason. Yeah. I'll be honest. In Italy, there are people who have a bunch of Latin tattoos on them hidden, and they'll show me it. They're cool, and they explain to me, and they're not all religious. They just have them because they're cool. They have some relation to the religion. No problem with that.
Now, do I think this guy's got more problems than what he needs right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I think he's going to be the first guy to go in the Trump cabinet?
Probably.
I think it's going to be one of the shortest reigns of any Secretary of Defense.
I mean, Kentucky Atheist, you bring up a few points here, which I'm actually not as aware of. You might be more aware of. So he does agree that he doesn't care about these tattoos, the racist tattoos. He does care about letting an alcoholic who paid off rape victims, allegedly. I'm not sure. I'm going to say allegedly because I'm not sure. And has zero experience leading anything, lead the largest bureaucracy in the world, and the consequences.
I do. I agree with the second part. Until someone's been convicted of something, I know it can be alleged. I can't
rule on it because I have known people who have been slandered in a horrible way by those who they thought loved them, and it comes out after a few weeks, even months, or even longer, that they lied, and they get vindicated, but they're ostracized, and I'm not gonna jump the gun. Yeah. To say I listen, due process. If the evidence is there, they'll be convicted. If the evidence isn't there, who knows? Right?
And on due process on either side, I don't care what your political persuasion is.
Yeah.
I don't want to put anybody down and take them out of a job. Like I look at things like just anything. Just unless there's due process, unless someone's been convicted.
Yeah.
I'm
very wary.
I don't want to ruin anybody's life.
I am a strong believer of it. Innocent to
but are you? Yeah, but are you correct that some guy who was on Fox News writes some books and he does a little bit of charity work? Should he be running probably the largest organization? I think it's still the largest organization within the federal government.
Pretty much, yeah.
Overseeing?
No, probably not. Listen, I told you this when we first got appointed. I was like, who?
Yeah.
I was like, the Fox News host? I was like,
which I think is also evident now. He lied.
Yeah, he did.
He lied with this whole signal thing. Right? And I'm not sure if I've got the article up here.
Before you go on, Kentucky Atheist had another point here saying he can be racist. He has multiple racist tattoos. The problem is not having the self-awareness to respect foreign leaders. I'm assuming you mean leaders and not leader. Again, I'm not going to say a tattoo is racist unless it's a clear swastika or something, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be really cut and dry. Deus Vult and a Jerusalem cross. And I think the infidel's in poor taste. I understand why he got it.
But some people look at the scarf I'm wearing and they think horrible things about me.
Yeah. I look at a Yankees fan and I think horrible things about him. Listen, I like the Sox and Mets. Yankees can go screw, right? And I have Yankees friends. People
call me gringo. People down here call me gringo.
Yeah, I call you gringo sometimes.
Yeah, they don't mean it as mean.
It is technically racist.
Technically, it's racist.
It means it's just a generic way to call a blonde white person.
Foreigner.
Blonde white foreigner.
Yeah. Get out of here, foreigner. But they call me gringo. It's just for fun. These people are not being mean, so I call myself gringo. It's like there's context to everything. Again, I think when you're an outside looking in, just to say this or that, this is what this means. I don't know. But his signal, the issue that he's having with signal, again, he lied. Yeah. I have a problem. What I have a problem with is that he lied.
And on top of that, he's not qualified. He really isn't qualified for this position. You're completely right, Atheist. This is probably one of the most random picks I could have seen for the Secretary of Defense, right?
Yeah.
I would imagine the Secretary of Defense would have at least, he has military experience, but not like high-level military experience.
No.
What is he? He's like what? A normal soldier, essentially, Marine?
He's like a lieutenant, not even a lieutenant, I think sergeant.
Marine or Army? Marine, right?
I think he's Army.
He's Army? I could be wrong.
He's seen battle.
No, he's seen battle, and I think that's obviously a very important, valuable thing for a Secretary of Defense to have is, I'm not saying everyone needs to have combat experience, but if you have combat experience, you obviously know the horrors of war and conflict, and you obviously want to do your best to avoid that. But that's about, in terms of his qualifications, that's about as far as they go. And I would just like if they had more to their repertoire.
He has no integrity right now. To me, he has no integrity because when that whole thing happened, okay, if you don't know, the whole signal intel, they're using an app. He accidentally put a reporter, or somebody put a reporter on the group chat.
It wasn't him. It was
the NSA advisor.
Okay. NSA advisor.
All right.
Which is, I don't know. National Security Advisor does not know who he's adding. Is a shit show.
All right. But this guy, he's texting out specific weapons, timing, and targets of when they're going to strike the Houthi rebels in Yemen, which...
I don't know why you're doing that over a text message app.
Here's where it gets weird. Let me slow this down. Information that comes out of the Defense Department can be classified confidential by the Secretary of Defense, or he can classify it as not confidential. So basically, he got off scot-free by saying, yeah, this information isn't confidential, even though anybody else in their free world, or in their right mind, would say, no, that's pretty confidential information. But then what happens is, before the reporter gets called out, now this reporter's like, listen, this is what happened. Now the reporter took screenshots because he's not an idiot. But before the reporter gives out the screenshots, this guy comes on and he lands. I forgot where he was landing. He's talking to reporters. He gets off the airplane and says, and calls the reporter a hack, a liar, and says there was no war plans. None of that was ever in it. But then in the next 2 days, the journalist is like, well, you're going to come out and call me a liar and a hack and call me his names and say that I'm BSing? Well, here you go. Here are the screenshots. And it turns out,
yeah, he was lying.
I think when you're discussing targets, timing, and weapons packages to be used,
and when
those are war plans.
Where you're doing this is war plans.
Those are war
plans. Confidential can get. Okay. You can't just be like, it's not confidential just to save your ass.
Yeah.
An atheist, you're right. I think he's right to an extent here. I'm not saying he should absolutely resign.
Yeah.
I think he should though.
I think he should resign.
I think after this he should resign.
Yep.
I'm not out to try to get people out of the job.
Sorry, I had Dick Cheney in the War Department already once, in the Department of Defense once. I had a Dick Cheney as a vice president, and that's all that freaking guy did was lie, and it cost thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives. The last thing I want is someone who cannot at least have a modicum of decorum, look in the camera and go, I effed up, sorry, move on. Instead, he has to lie about it.
Yeah, if he had come out and just said, listen, at least if he went out and said, listen, the plan went off without a hitch. It's my fault that I discussed this in this chat. It shouldn't ever happen again. We're going to be more potent. If he just went out there, took responsibility, and made an effort to not only come to peace with not only just the reporter, but also the media and the people, and make that effort to actually respect national security and confidentiality, I would be like, you know what? I'll give him another chance. Of course, absolutely thin ice, but I would be more willing to give him at least another chance because, humans are human. This is not the first time we've had a leak through a signal chat.
But here's my other problem.
Of any type. But he is, you are right. He should resign. Maybe not just for attacking the media, but he did attack the media. He attacked the reporter.
He attacked the media. He lied.
Yeah. He should. Okay, now, did he break the law? Yes, technically, right?
Okay.
Technically.
No. Here's where it gets fuzzy. Because I watched the hearing. Okay. He has, because he's Secretary of Defense, he can classify or declassify. He can label something confidential or not confidential.
So he could just write not confidential?
So basically, he can just walk up and goes, yeah, that's not confidential information. Now, there's a department memo, a guideline that exists within the rules of the Department of Defense that say that information regarding war planning, including targets, packages, things like that, that should be automatically confidential, right? So it's automatically confidential once it exists, but once he gets caught that he didn't, again,
he can declassify.
He can sort of like pardon himself.
Yeah,
it's how it works. Okay,
it's as fucked up as it is,
as messed up as it is, but that is how it works. And here's my larger issue. Is that one? I think Tulsi Gabbard should be. Again, I was always a huge fan. She perjured herself in front of Congress. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I know, actually, she didn't perjure herself. She BS'd enough that you can't call it perjury.
Right.
But she wasn't telling the truth.
Right.
This guy wasn't telling the truth. And it seemed like the administration was more apt to sort of basically say there's nothing to see here. When all you got to do is come out and say, I'm sorry, this happened. shit happens. We effed up. It won't happen again. We'll move on. We'll be better, right? Cool. Take responsibility, accountability. Instead, what they do is they come out. Now, I'm no fan of the previous administration, but they come out and say, well, Joe Biden's administration, the Biden administration did this, and they did that, and they left. They didn't care about national security because of this. They didn't care about national security because of that. Listen, just because you can point to another, again, it's the whole thing like, well, they jumped off the bridge into the river, so I did too.
Yeah, it's like, it's not a good excuse.
That's the mentality we got here. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, see, the way Signal works is it's not names on the app. So it's like, you think of WhatsApp and you'd have like a group chat, you have everybody's name. No, in Signal, it's done by initials. Right. So once you enter Tulsi Gabbard, it just comes up as TG.
Right.
All right. That's why this guy, Jeff Goldberg, was the journalist was they thought he was somebody else. That's why he was included. That's how the accident happened, right? Instead, it was a different.
My question is, I don't know how you mistype a phone number.
Well, it's not that you don't type in phone numbers. You type in.
Oh, they're who's on the app. Oh, it's like what? Okay, I get what you mean now.
Okay, so
but still, you would prioritize your contacts, which means you would have he would be one of your contacts.
Yeah,
which means that's just your fault for not double checking the number attached.
So I'll give it to this: the CIA director John Radcliffe, he took it on the chin in front of Congress and said, yeah, this sucks. Yeah, we did it. It was wrong, blah, blah, blah. And he was forthright. And he was getting grilled by by the Democrats. He was getting grilled by some Republicans. But he took it on the chin, and he was actually a stand-up guy. Tulsi Gabbard, she's on the link in the Signal chat as TG, and then they have the screenshots and the confidential information later on. Congress has it that says that's Tulsi Gabbard. And you know what they asked? They asked her, are you the TG in this chat? You know what she said? I have to check on that. I'm not really sure. We're investigating.
Bullshit. Listen, that's just, I need competent people in competent positions. I'm sure Gabbard has the qualifications. Wait, what is she, National Security Advisor? No.
She's the Director of National Intelligence.
Okay, never mind. Listen, you're Director of National Intelligence and you don't know if you're in a group chat. I have concerns.
No, you do know. And
you do know, and you're bullshitting.
Just say. You're not the one that sent the message. Like, if it was me, I'd be like, yeah, that's me. Those are my initials. I didn't send a message. I received it. Yeah, I would have literally said, this sucks. Yeah, I know. This is a mistake. We have to fix this.
We have to be better. And it's not like you made the group chat either. You have a way out. You listen, I was added to the group chat. It was totally secure. I had people check it. They said they assumed it was secure. Turns out it wasn't. Yes, that is me in the group chat. We fucked up. Sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, that can absolutely put American lives in danger. You're right, atheist.
Yeah, it does. That's the problem that no one is focusing on. Is if it's very easy, atheist, very easy, and they even testified to this in Congress. It's very easy that even an iPhone that's turned off, can be turned into a receiver, and you can listen to the conversation of whoever's carrying. The Chinese can do it. The Israelis can do it. The Russians can do it.
Anyone can do it. With a competent intelligence system, you can do it.
You can do that, right? So they could hack the signal intelligence, which included the vice president's opinion, and some of the differing opinions he might have had from the president, because the vice president disagreed with the president on this whole thing, right? They could have hacked this. They could have had the timing of the strikes. They could have had the place of the strikes. They could have had all that, and they could have been ready.
Yeah, and they could have lost planes. They could have lost fighters. And that'd be a national embarrassment. International embarrassment. And it's just... It's wrong.
So there are a lot of people on the right, which I usually side on the right. I usually lean right. This is the one where I'm going,
you're wrong.
You're wrong. This is the one where you have to go, listen, the difference between good and bad is sometimes just owning up to the mistakes and going, we effed up and we have to be better. We're human. This can't happen again. How can we move forward?
And how can we be better about it going forward?
Yeah.
Now we're going to kind of go through some of your comments here. Because we've kind of been on our own.
We've been on our rant. Sorry about that.
We're trying to catch up here. We have kind of kept up a little bit. He says, right, that's all they had to do was say it was a mistake. It was still a violation of the Espionage Act, but it would make it more sense to overlook. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it could have been. It could have been overlooked. I mean, I'd have to reread the Espionage Act. It's been a while, but you're probably right. It probably does break some laws. Congress wants to continue to investigate. And that's fine. So if they broke laws, let's figure that out.
Right. And I'm sure, listen, if they had just come out and been honest about it, they would have probably been like, okay, let's move on. Let's not try to go after people's throats here politically. You don't want more division as a country, right? Obviously, if you need to get out, you need to get out, though. He says here, it was a national defense information. It's automatically classified, and Hegseth doesn't have the authority to change that.
Yes, he does.
So
yes, he does. He actually does.
He does have the authority.
They actually testified this. Congress actually, the subcommittee did. I watched the whole hearing. Congress did testify. Not the people, not Tulsi Gabbard, but the congressmen, the panel did confirm that the Secretary of Defense has power of classification when it comes to information that is solely responsible or generated from the Department of Defense.
Which this is. So
which this is.
He through a loophole, he has the power to kind of pardon himself.
Believe me, I think it's as ridiculous as it sounds, because it should be as ridiculous as it sounds, but it's not. But it's not. Just like Marco Rubio, there's a similar thing. Marco Rubio can determine what information is considered confidential or not confidential as long as it's generated from the State Department only and has no other implication beyond the foreign policy realm. Because it was just war planning and war planning logistics, it does not go beyond
the Department of Defense. Now that's a little. I think that's a little different from the Secretary. Obviously, he says here the Secretary of Defense cannot declassify national defense documents.
No, that's
different. That is the power of the president. No, this is a little different because it's not a national defense document.
Again, you're speaking semantics, and semantics matter here. Semantics matter here. And again, I thought it was as ridiculous when I heard the argument in Congress. And
it should follow. It should honestly that should fall underneath the same power of the president. I agree with you on that one. I think the Secretary of Defense should not have more power over certain documentation than the president does.
Yeah.
And in this case, he has more power, and that's wrong.
And here's the thing. What I'm repeating to you is coming from the lips of a Democratic senator.
Right.
Because they were reading this and they were like, okay, this is the guideline. Okay,
I'm sure
because they were trying to get to the bottom of it. Believe me, they did not want this to be the way it was. Neither did I. I don't think it should be, but it is a guideline. It is within the.
I'm sure they were reading this and they're like, "Damn, we really overlooked that." Well, maybe not them specifically, but the Congress that created those bylaws, they overlooked that as a possible point.
And so what happened is soon after they recessed because they realized none of their questions would be answered. They had to go into what they call a SCIF, which is where it's private, it's not public, and then that's when everything that was quote unquote confidential or not being able to be talked about. Could be discussed. Yeah. You're never going to hear about what that is.
No, unfortunately.
Right now you're not. But I mean, and
until that gets declassified.
Bottom line is, though, I don't trust him.
Yeah, I don't trust him. Right now, he's lost my trust. You are right. Tulsi Gabbard and Mike Waltz just flat out lied to Congress. Yeah, really did. And listen, I want congressmen who are not only going to tell the truth. I understand if they feel threatened and they're going to maybe throw a white lie here. They need to come out and be truthful. I understand it's human nature to throw out a white lie to try to protect yourself, but when it comes to something so serious like this, you need to be honest. You need to come out and you need to own it because guess what? You're making a lot of money being a public servant. Never mind, we're not even going to talk about the insider trading that you probably participate in, right? Just beyond that alone, the least you owe the American people is to be honest and come and be forthright about your mistakes.
When it comes to something like this,
especially like this.
But again, I will give John Radcliffe all the kudos because as evasive and as I don't know what the word is that I could use that Gabbard and Waltz were. John Radcliffe was honest and forthright.
Yeah,
and you could tell he was embarrassed. And the problem is John Radcliffe, in a way, as the director of the CIA, kind of reports a little bit to Tulsi Gabbard. And you could see during the hearing, he was sort of like giving her like the shifty eye, like
you're throwing me under the bus here.
Like, what are you doing? Like I can't. Like he's like I can't. The eyes were like I can't follow your lead on this. I can't do it. You know. And I think I think you're seeing the first rift within the cabinet, and to have it be a rift within the intelligence community part of the cabinet, again, I think that's what I have to say. Go ahead.
Now we're just going to kind of catch up here. Thank you for the compliment. He says you guys put on a good show, even if we disagree on some things. I mean, that's what we try to do. Listen, I think I'm a very strong believer of this. When I lived in the States, when I was abroad in an American university. Being an American does mean, of course, participating in the political process, educating yourself and creating your own beliefs and understanding of what you support and what you agree with and what you disagree with. But that also includes being able to discuss with the other side without making each other lifelong enemies, being violent, or just being intolerant. Tolerance is key. And if we can't discuss with each other what we disagree with, even if we walk away from the table still disagreeing, that's okay. That's the American way. At least we know we're not enemies. We still want a good country. That's because in the end, that's what everyone wants.
I think that the thing that you and I have that a lot of people don't is, First of all, first and foremost, for the first 35 years of my life, I was born and raised in, I guess, what you would call the bastion of liberalism, which is Massachusetts, which is where you were born and raised for the first, 10 years of your life?
Yeah, 10, 11.
Right? And then we moved to Michigan, which is, let's face it, Michigan, you get both sides there.
It is.
Honestly,
I mean, cartoons, they put political ads for
Yeah.
cartoons. I was like, I don't want Hillary Clinton. I was like, why do I care? I just want to
Yeah.
watch Adventure Time.
Listen, depending on what day of the week it is, Michigan's either conservative or liberal. And then we ended up in Texas, which is extremely conservative.
Yeah.
Right? And then for a time being while we're in Texas, I had to spend a few months in California. I was all over the place. But what it gave us is it gave you and I perspective on a lot of differing opinions and how different the world is from just a few miles down the road, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we've...
And I think that's important. I think that's why I encourage people to travel beyond their state.
Yeah.
A lot of Texans don't do that. I encourage them they do.
No, a lot of Texans still say, we're going on vacation. Where are you going? Texas. They're staying in Texas.
They stay in Texas. They won't leave the state. And then they look at other states and the problems they face. They're like, why do you face that problem? It just doesn't make sense to me. And it's a lack of perspective. I think perspective is huge. Just do a little travel even within our own country. It's so big. I mean, even Europeans, when I had some of my friends, I told them how big our country was and they really kind of understood it. And when they went for the first time, they're like, wow, you guys are like different from state to state. It's like to multiple countries, you know, like a New Yorker is very different from a Bostonian, right? Never mind a Midwest Michigander, Texan, or Californian, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we try our best. And I'm open to being wrong. I think you are as well.
I've been wrong.
I've been wrong before.
I have 2 sons and a wife. I've had 3 people in my life that tell me I'm wrong a lot. So
Okay. Listen,
I'm okay.
I may have a perspective on something that might not be exactly the full truth. And if someone presents a good case, hey, if it's a good case and it sways me, it sways me. It doesn't mean I don't. I'm not educated. It just means there's a perspective I didn't consider.
You want to hear about wrong? You want to hear? Okay. I voted for Romney for Massachusetts governor.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
I don't know why I did that.
I don't know why you did that.
Sorry, I did that.
Now you go on to here and you say you're a computer tech. Signal is an end-to-end encryption app. Goldberg had to be a contact. She also said she didn't know she was in Russia at the time.
Oh yeah, it was Witkoff. Witkoff, the
Which is just wow.
Okay, that's a little interesting. That story. Steve Witkoff, who's the he's basically the main negotiator for the peace deal for Ukraine and Russia, was on that chat. And he was in Russia at the time that this chat was occurring. But it does turn out that he did leave his phone at home.
Yeah, they gave him a burner. Usually when you go to those countries.
He's a guy who, when he goes, he brings burner phones.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want...
And that's smart. I'm glad he was actually smart enough to leave the iPhone at home.
And it isn't, yes, you have to be added, but Signal is pervasive within the U.S. government. It's something even John Radcliffe, he goes, the first minute that I was CIA director, he goes, I got to my office. As soon as I booted up my computer, Signal was automatically put on his phone and automatically put on his computer without him even having to say anything.
It was just kind of, it's like
you could tell he does not like that app because he was the director of national intelligence in the first Trump term. You could tell he's not a fan of that app. Yes, it's end-to-end encrypted. So is my iPhone. Believe me,
there's a lot of end-to-end encryption. Doesn't mean it's the best.
Yeah,
I want something that's not maybe publicly available like Signal.
Yeah. I used to work with the engineers in Apple, and I'd be like, so end-to-end encrypted, so no one can hack my stuff. They're like,
no,
they're like, no, everybody can hack your stuff. And I was like, that's what I love about you Chinese. The Chinese, it was a group of Chinese engineers. I said, that's what I love about you guys. Direct and honest.
Just straightforward. Listen, it's
like, no, we'll get your stuff.
We'll get your stuff. It'll take us longer, but we'll get it.
We'll get it. So, but all right.
We have a little more comments here to catch up, of course. Congress said they are not going to investigate.
No. Today, 2 Republican congressmen came out and they do want an investigation.
I think they should.
I think there will be further investigations. I think this is something that's going to simmer for a little bit. I think
they're going to put pressure on Trump to have him resign.
I think, right now, as more and more... until they get a real answer, you should have seen...
listen, if he just was honest from the beginning, I think this would have been blown over by now. But just because of that, now you can't really trust him as much as you want to in that position of power.
Yeah. So two Republican congressmen came out and they said they would be in favor of investigation. Now, with the razor-thin margin that they have in the House of Representatives, 2 Republican congressmen coming out and saying, yeah, we favor this, is a big deal.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. Now, he also says it is a national defense document. That's why they keep saying it doesn't have methods and sources, because it having methods makes it automatically an NDI doc.
Yeah,
National
I mean,
defense,
I don't argue with you.
I don't argue with you. It's just apparently the bylaws, and this is Democratic senators being like, listen, the bylaws say this. As much as it doesn't make sense, it's what it stipulates, and that's and you can't argue with the bylaw. That it's just words. Yeah. It's very narrow and specific. Because
they asked like, okay, I'll give you an example. They asked the CIA director John Ratcliffe during the hearing that I was watching, and they said, "Would you consider this confidential information?" And he goes, listen, it didn't come from the CIA, so I can't consider it confidential, not confidential. Since it came from the Secretary of Defense and it came from the Department of Defense, the only person that can tell you that or answer that question is Pete Hegseth.
Which is, as much as I know he wants to probably say.
And you could tell he wanted to say, yeah, no shit, this is
no shit, it's confidential. But I technically can't say that because one, he's kind of, my coworker, but also two, it's not his place to technically say that, as it's not his department. You know what I mean? You can't overstep your department boundaries.
No.
But
the one I'm most disappointed in, besides Pete Hegseth, is Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah,
I didn't think she was going to be like.
No,
that is not.
I had more faith in her.
I had more faith in her.
Yeah, I had more faith in her than most of the people in that cabinet. You agree. Okay, hold on, wait a second. You're saying they couldn't talk about it because it was classified information and that it's not classified at the same time. Yeah,
exactly.
What paradox? What shitty paradox is this?
I'm telling you right now, even one of the congressmen, the Democratic congressman, I'll find the clip at some point. He basically looks at me and goes, you can't have it both ways. It's either confidential, it's not confidential. And they were like, so what was in the message? They're like, we can't talk about that. And it's like, but they would never say the word confidential because that would get him in trouble. It was the most ridiculous.
It was the greatest bullshit poll.
You weren't home. You were out you were out somewhere.
No, I caught it.
You caught it?
I had caught parts of it. I was like,
I even texted you. I go, what the frig is this?
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen anything like, I'm like,
I've never seen someone say it was really embarrassing because it's very clearly confidential, but he can't say it because he doesn't want to get fired and in trouble. Now,
but then you turn on Fox News that night and you've got, Hannity and all those guys.
Backing him all the way.
Backing them and then going back, immigration and border. And I'm like, I get that. Those are problems, but that doesn't mean you get to do this.
Yeah, you don't get to just overlook this point.
That doesn't make this okay.
No. And you agree. Yeah, I think we all agree. We can't disagree without hating or fighting. Yeah, that's fair. You're from rural Kentucky most of your life, but you briefly lived outside of DC. That's very cool.
Nice.
I think I've never been to DC. I really want to go.
I've been to DC a few times. I love Lexington, by the way. Been there.
Oh, Lexington, Kentucky.
Oh yeah, love Lexington. That was a good place. I had a good time. There, good people there. Yeah. I had to go there for some training. I stayed in a hotel for about a week. I had to go there for some training when I worked for Apple, and that's good. That was a nice place.
Yeah,
that's nice. That's good. Beautiful. Kentucky's beautiful. We drove through Kentucky.
Great fried chicken.
I don't think that's no. Don't do that. Don't do that. All right. Our next. We're gonna
run through
the comments, but we'll get to the next story in a minute.
Okay. They asked Tulsi where she was. She said she didn't know, but somewhere in Asian Pacific. Turns out she was in Russia at the time.
Oh, was she in Russia?
Yeah, apparently.
She should not have been in Russia.
Yeah, that's really concerning. You really shouldn't lie about that, especially with the phone.
Why was she in? Because if she was with Steve Witkoff, then that puts Steve Witkoff in a bad place.
Yeah, because Witkoff was doing the responsibly. Tulsi was like, I can't the iPhone. Fuck.
Well, they asked her, did you have your personal phone? Was this on your personal phone or on your work phone? The government issued phone, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, we're investigating. I'm like, what do you mean you're investigating?
You know where this is.
Like, what do you mean?
No, we're investigating means it's on my personal phone, and that's bad, and I can't tell you that.
We're investigating until we can get it from my personal phone onto my government phone. We're going to continue to investigate. So,
right. It was part of the package, he says, but the DNI told them it was compromised and not to put sensitive info on it. I think he's referring to Witkoff or Gabbard when they were in Russia. So they might have had something that was given to them. And there was not supposed to be any sensitive information, from what I understand this, and they added the chat.
So was Gabbard. Killer Gabbard.
So Gabbard lied even more. But he also didn't hear about the investigation, so that's news for him. So glad we can.
Yeah, there were two stories came out. Now, again, Republican congressmen are calling for investigation. Does that mean it will happen? I think it will. If the press doesn't let go of this story, they will have to.
I think they should, no matter what. To be honest, that's what I would hope for.
And I think it's going to be.
I won't be surprised if Hegseth is out of a job.
Look, the Democrats need something to hang their hat on right now, and that'll be it. They're not gonna. They got this. if they can stop their infighting.
I mean, and that's just creating a party line there. I look at this as just a victory for everybody, if Republicans included, because now they're like, okay, listen, we voted for this guy because we trusted Trump and we want to make him happy, but we need a better guy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put one of our boys in there, which is or even just someone who's neutral. I don't care. Someone who's competent. Give me a competent defense secretary, okay? But moving on with that,
we're gonna move on. Thanks.
Wait. She claimed memory loss. She couldn't remember.
I haven't heard that. I'd have to find. You'd have to tell me where that came from.
If she claimed that she couldn't remember, I'm gonna lose my shit.
Oh no, yeah, they all did.
I don't remember.
That's typical what they do. That's typically what they do in a congressional hearing. I can't recall that exactly. That's what they said. I cannot recall that exactly.
The Signal app was compromised allegedly.
I have no doubt.
I have no doubt. It's an app. Of course, it's a compromise.
Of course, it was.
All right, but we're gonna take a break from a little politics. We're going to baseball, right?
We're gonna go baseball. So today was a really special day for us because we love baseball.
Is this on the screen?
You
should probably put that on the screen.
Probably put that on the screen.
That's a good point. You're welcome, Gringo.
Thank you. You see, that's why I have you.
See,
I'm stupid. All right, here we go.
No, I'm not that stupid.
All right. Today was a special day for us because we love baseball. Opening day is awesome. We love it. Mm-hmm. But apparently, MLB had a problem. So you and I, we were huge baseball fans. This is like this for us is like Super Bowl day, right?
Yo, it's a fun day.
It's a fun day. We watch baseball morning, noon, and night. There's even baseball on right now, and we'll get to it in a minute. But when we're done with the stream, but apparently MLB.
Really
went basically had a worldwide outage. I mean, they said there were 20. Okay, we even complained. Major League Baseball has dropped the ball for fans from America's pastime. The league's MLB TV streaming service is down for thousands of users. We were one of them. Mm-hmm. Happening on the 2025 baseball season's opening day of Thursday. At 4:03 p.m. Eastern, there were more than 21,000 user complaints about the MLB TV, including ones from Europe. So this wasn't just a U.S. thing. On Uptime monitoring device down detector.com. Most of the complaints, 71%, were attributed to problems with the MLB TV app. And it really was. It was the app. So, again, love baseball, but call it where it is. This was disappointing. Yeah. We missed the first 4 innings of most of the games that we wanted to see. Mm-hmm. We're in a foreign country, so hopefully we get to choose the games that we want to watch.
Oh, yeah. There's no blackout
Sox
restriction. Yeah, so it's great.
But this was a really big disappointing thing because we pay a lot of money for the people. This is not a cheap subscription, folks. No. Okay,
yearly subscription. Yeah, no, it's not cheap.
It's a yearly subscription. It's not cheap, and it's usually you only get opening day once, and it's just not a good look for MLB. I'm not sure if they're going to do anything for anybody, give a refund or give something.
I think they could do something nice. I would appreciate it,
but what it would be, I don't know. But it was definitely this is something that
because the sport's in a good spot. You have to agree.
It's in a good spot.
It's in a good spot, and a lot of people were really excited for this season.
Yep.
I mean, especially after last season, you got a Yankees-Dodgers World Series, and if you were disappointed with it only being 5 games, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
But you're still very excited for this upcoming season. And real quickly, yeah, you are right. The Democrats are broken too. Competence would be great. I agree with you there. And in her testimony, yeah, you are right. She said she didn't remember anything. But yeah, it's a good switch. Let's switch to baseball. A little away from politics. A little more fun here, huh?
But I think there's something about baseball where we call it the pastime, and it's the one sport that I really tried to pass on to you and pass on to your brother.
You didn't really have to try with me. I took off with that thing. It was really the other one that we had to try a little more with. But he likes it too.
It's the thing about MLB. The thing about watching baseball as opposed to watching. All right, when you're watching football, it's just so timed and rigid and whatnot that you're watching. There's very little interaction. But when it comes to baseball, there's a lot of interaction. It really
allows room to talk and enjoy.
Yeah, there's a lot of room there. And for me, the history of Major League Baseball, if you look at the history of Major League Baseball, it mirrors the history of the United States a lot, in both good times and in bad. So again, this day for the MLB app to not work right, to not have been tested properly, to have issues for, again, 21,000, that's not the real number. Again, when I'm seeing complaints on Twitter from Europe, I know that it's more than 21,000. Okay? Mm. I know that it's a problem.
Let's not even consider Japan.
Yeah, let's consider Japan who want to see,
the Dodgers.
The Dodgers play.
No, by that time they probably had the app fixed.
They might have had it. Yeah.
They didn't have the app fixed because we were watching it. But I mean, if they wanted to see any other games, like they want to see the Yankees or even what other team do they want to see? The Mets, Kodai Senga, right?
Yeah.
Or even if you like Yoshida there, the Red Sox, you miss some of those games, and it's rough.
No, nothing against the product of the game itself today. excellent day of games.
Fun.
A lot of
Good
fun.
time.
A lot of fun. But again, MLB as an institution, this is one of those things where I think
They made a mistake.
they made a mistake, and this is not fun. This was not fun. Sitting there going, is it us trying to re-download stuff and update stuff? It just wasn't a good look. So to MLB, if you're out there, I don't know, maybe throw us a bone, throw us something.
Give me a free hat. No, I'm joking. I would love a free hat. Are you kidding me?
Dude,
you see my collection.
Yeah, I see your collection. I don't know if it's anything free or just like, I don't know.
Maybe like a little discount for like next year's subscription.
I don't know.
That'd be nice.
Just ask us. Do you own MLB The Show 25? Send us some stubs.
That'd be cool.
That'd be cool. You know,
maybe a free card, diamond card, random pack. That'd be appreciated.
I don't know, something like that. But
anyways,
but yeah, that's what happened today. But baseball is going on, and we're happy about that.
Yeah.
Actually, watching the Cubs Diamondbacks right here.
Hey, I told you, I think the Cubs are going to win this one.
I hope not.
You paused it.
I didn't want to pause it.
That's okay. You played football, basketball, and baseball through most of your school until they made you pick in high school. You chose football. I understand that. I respect it. Personally, I would have gone with baseball, but when I went to go try out for baseball in high school, they told me, one, I was too short. I was really short back then, to be fair. I think I was just barely 5 foot.
Yeah.
I was tiny. And I didn't really have that much experience in terms of like playing baseball in school districts or even like outside of school districts, like professional kind of little leagues, right? I only played in the backyard of it, and I just had an interest, and it kind of just shut me down. It was sad, but it doesn't deteriorate my love for the sport, right?
Yeah, I as I said before, we were talking about education. After 8th grade, I didn't want to be in public school anymore. I knew it was bad where I was. I ended up going to a school that was a private Catholic school. I didn't know this. I had played baseball. I had played football. I had played basketball. I had played hockey. And I thought, oh, okay, cool. I'll join a sport. But when I got there, the sports were like, no. This school, you get asked to play. You don't try out. So a lot of the kids there were recruited. It was one of those types of schools. So so the football team was always in contention for the title, the state title, the 1A title, the 1AA title. Same thing with the soccer. Same thing with the baseball. It was the high school. The program was so good that there were many people that were on the high school baseball team when I graduated that went to colleges that were competitive to like
get you to the league.
They could get you to the league, but that's hard to do. But I don't think any of them did, but they had a chance. So it was that kind of thing. So I had to just go to club activities. So that was the end of my sporting career there. Not even golf. Couldn't even golf, tennis. Everything was recruited. Everything was recruited.
Dude, that sucks.
Yeah, and they gave scholarships. So
okay. Well, at least they compensate the students. That's nice.
So, but I did miss playing. I did want to play baseball. I did want to play football. But again, these people that were recruited, like I was 6'2", 6'1", 6'2", 240. These people made me look small. So, but anyways.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, with that. All right, we've been at it.
Yeah, that did suck for. You are right. There were a lot of pissed off fans. If you look on Twitter, there are people demanding refunds, even or saying they were going to sue.
Saying they're going to sue.
Oh yeah.
So,
man, but I appreciate that you love baseball. That's cool.
Love it. So,
actually, hold on. Before you go on, what's your favorite team in baseball?
Yeah,
I'm curious because you live near DC, so I imagine you'd be maybe a Nationals fan. But then again, you live in Kentucky, so they don't really have a team. You have a lot of options. There's Cincinnati Reds right above. I know that. A lot of Kentucky fans Kentucky people that I know, which isn't many. There's like 3. They usually go for the Reds.
Too,
yeah,
so Cleveland.
No, they don't pick Cleveland because it's too far. They pick the Reds because it's right on the border, pretty much.
Okay.
But I'll wait for an answer to see if you got a favorite team. If you don't, it's cool.
As you can tell, we're Sox fans.
Yeah, we're pretty big Red Sox fans. But I have a bunch of teams. As I mentioned earlier, I like the Mets. I like the Padres. I do like a soft spot for the Guardians because I used to know them as the Indians because that's what I know them as. I'll call them the Indians occasionally by accident.
I love following the Orioles just because Cal Ripken Jr. was my favorite player growing up as a kid. Detroit Tigers, Alan Trammell, great shortstop as well.
We lived in Michigan, so Tigers, yeah.
The Cubs.
I went to Chicago so much. I knew Wrigley.
Yeah.
I saw Wrigley always like the Cubs. I like more in baseball. I'm more lenient with the teams I follow and like. So I've got a few. The Sox are my favorite above all, but beyond that, you have anything to add?
I'm good.
We'll see if he adds in his team here. If he doesn't,
Well, Kentucky Atheist, thank you for all the comments. Appreciate it. We're going to get out of here because it is about that time for us to go.
Yep.
We got work to finish because then we get sleep to have.
yeah. Well, you might have sleep to have. I might not.
I don't think I'm sleeping.
Ooh, you're a Yankees fan?
Oh.
Dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Shit.
All right. We promise that we can get along with everybody.
Yeah, we'll get along. I mean, you're not the first Yankees fan that at least that I know and I'm
Jesus
friendly
wept.
with. Yeah. Do you know how many friends I have that are Yankees fans?
My grandfather was a Yankees fan living in Massachusetts. It was hilarious because all he would get was Red Sox games. He would swear and yell at the television all the time. It was hilarious. But anyways.
Yeah. Oh, you like the Red Sox? I respect it. I give him a break because he's from Kentucky, so he doesn't have to fall heavy into the rivalry.
Yeah.
I give you a break.
Yeah. All right.
But we appreciate it.
Appreciate you very much.
We're on Saturday and then also Monday.
Monday.
Right. We're on Saturday and Monday. So if you want to join us again, and we'll absolutely take a look at your channel. And you can write to us. You like the Cubs too? I respect it.
Respect the Cubs.
Yeah, I respect the Cubs. But yeah, maybe we do a collab. Maybe we do something in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but
very cool.
We'll hopefully see you Saturday. But with that,
we're gonna get out of here. I am your reluctant gringo, and from south of the border.
Salud.
Salud.
A huevo.
A huevo. Adios.